xCloud, new controllers, and did Sony validate the Xbox SAD? We've got a lot to talk about. What's up everybody, Brad here back again, and it has been a busy week in the world of the gaming industry. Well, sort of. I mean, we're talking about fringe rumors here, things that have been leaking out, and well, Sony's earnings this week also provided us some insights about how that console is doing. But first, I want to talk about xCloud, because xCloud has been the hottest thing on the Microsoft side, right? A lot of people are very interested in it. We haven't heard a lot about it. We've seen some demos. Microsoft talked a little bit about it at E3, but we know that later this year, we are going to see the first public demonstrations of the service, and you should be able to get your hands on it. Now, what we haven't heard explicitly yet is how you'll access the service, right? It could be through a browser, it could be through an app, it could be through whatever. And while I think all those answers will eventually be true, you'll have app-based access and eventually be able to access it through a browser. What we have seen this week, and it has shown up previously, but I think as we're talking about now, is a placeholder in the Microsoft Store that they are actually starting to take the right steps towards getting that application out there, and it's very easy, called xCloud Test Game. This was uncovered by Walking Cat, and obviously you can tell that this is a placeholder because it very largely says this is a placeholder. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that this application is only going to run on the Xbox console. Now, I wouldn't take that as like the gospel, if you will, that this is going to be the only place to test it out, but it would not surprise me that if initially xCloud is probably locked to potentially testing it on a console. It would not surprise me at all, because that is the most controlled environment Microsoft can establish, right? If you game on a PC or a phone, there's a lot of different variations of hardware and screen size and all that stuff, but with an Xbox, it's pretty well locked down, and very well understood on the Microsoft side of things about how that is going. So that will be interesting to watch, although again, it would not surprise me if Microsoft says, hey, you can test it on multiple devices, but at least for now, that demo app is only going to be available on the Xbox for now, until they change it, in which it very well might likely happen. But just keep in mind that, hey, they're taking the right steps towards getting those applications out, and we're getting just a minute bit closer to testing xCloud. Now, speaking of xCloud, I had some, I actually went on vacation with a friend this last weekend, and he's very well known in the industry and knows lots of different good stuff. One thing that I think that Stadia is going to struggle with, and Microsoft is not immune to this, and I don't think it's gotten enough attention yet, are the bandwidth caps are going to, I think, destroy potentially some of online game streaming. Google very boldly just said, hey, we think ISPs are going to adapt. That's what they said in their Reddit AMA. But talking with people who are familiar with how much bandwidth this stuff uses, if ISPs were freaking out about Netflix, game streaming is a magnitude larger than that. Like, it's not unheard of. In some of the game testing that I have seen and talked to people, that in a single gaming session at 4K, it is possible, if you game long enough, that you will stream more than a terabyte of data in a single day. And we all know that ISPs aren't too friendly about that, especially Comcast, who has a sort of unwritten rule that if you cross 2 terabytes in a month, you're going to get a little notice that says, hey, you're using too much data, which is really dumb. And I have a lot of strong opinions about that stuff, but we're not going to go there right now. But keep in mind, it's going to be dicey, right? And I think ISPs are probably foaming at the mouth right now thinking, ooh, more data coming down. We can charge for a game streaming SKU of our internet service, and really just really piss everyone off. But you know what? Here we are. Anyways, it doesn't matter because we don't know what the exact details are yet, but just keep that in mind. I need to do some more research on that stuff. Other things that are happening in the game streaming world this week, Microsoft didn't announce, but it leaked out again because of Walking Cat, and he finds what's seeming to be everything. There's going to be a new Gears 5 custom controller. Now, I keep wanting to call it Gears of War 5, but it's Gear 5 custom controller. I would imagine this is going to drop sometime around the month of September. That is when the game comes out, and clearly you can see that this is a non-elite version of the Xbox controller. I'm not in love with it personally. I don't like the yellow on the buttons. The blue looks okay, but there's something a little off about this design. And then, as you can see down below, there is a stand to hold the controller, but Microsoft is going all in on Gears 5 because they kind of have to, right? I think we all know the side of the story that Microsoft exclusives haven't been the best, right? They've struggled some. We've had great games like Sea of Thieves and Sunset Overdrive, but they never really caught on in a way that moved the needle for the Xbox franchise. And Gears, I keep wanting to call it Gears of War, has initially, right, the first couple in the series, especially Gears 1, was really big. And so Microsoft is trying to recreate some of that magic with Gears 5, and that's some of the decisions we've seen with the gameplay and style and all the microtransaction overhead crap that they're talking about. But anyways, Microsoft is trying to go big with Gears 5 because they need the exclusives to try to push the needle for the Xbox brand. I don't know if Gears 5 is going to be it. Phil Spencer did a recent interview where he was very candid about how some of the mistakes that they've made with that first-party IP and how they're trying to rectify those decisions by buying studios left and right and center. And I'm hearing more that Microsoft is still talking to more studios, or at least working with them. And it would not surprise me if there's going to be some more acquisition announcements here. I don't know necessarily in the near future, but they're definitely pushing down that path even further. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Continuing to hear that. Anyways, Gears 5 coming out in September, it will have that controller. Now, if you're not familiar with this individual, his name is Xbox Pope, and he does some really cool graphics, and unfortunately, they're not products, but he saw the Gears controller. I mean, let's take a look at it here. He saw this controller and said, I bet I can do better than that. And so he came up with this one, which actually looks fantastic. So obviously the big differences here are this is based on the new Elite controller, and he gave it that very nice shade of blue and the white. I think this looks fantastic. Unfortunately, we can't buy this, but Microsoft, if you're watching, you need to hire Xbox Pope, or at least freelance some work over to him, because he has come up with amazing designs. And that's not the only one. And this one is actually my favorite. I think this one should have been the true Gears 5 launch. Now, the only reason I see Microsoft never doing this specifically, even though these controllers look fantastic. I mean, look at these two. Look at that. I'd love to know which one you guys like, blue or red. I personally think I like the red. But the reason why I don't think Microsoft would actually do this, and this is a little bit of speculation here, is Microsoft didn't do very many... I'm trying to think if they did really any. The Elite controllers, right? They didn't really do many custom versions of this controller. They always kept it to their basic controller. They always redesigned this one with new plastic shells. They never did the Elite. And that's why I don't think that Microsoft would actually recreate the ones that Xbox Pope did, because that is their new Elite design, and they're not going to come out of the gate with custom variants of it when it's not even on sale yet. So it might happen that they do that eventually. I really hope that they do make custom versions of the Elite controller in the fancy colors, or even the Xbox Design Lab would be amazing. But right now, we haven't heard anything about that. Obviously, they're coming out with a black version. I bet we see a white version at some point, right? They've done the black and white with the standard Elite, and so the Elite V2 will likely follow that path at some point in the future. But we will have to hold our tongues until that point. So that is the kind of Xbox news. Now, we can't do a little gaming podcast in the middle of the week without talking about Sony. Sony actually published some very impressive numbers, and you can't be upset by this if you're a gamer. This is good news for the industry because it means gaming is healthy. Sony has announced that they have shipped more than 100 million consoles, which is great. Actually, they totaled 3.2 million consoles for the quarter, which is Q2 of the calendar year. But this also makes the Sony PlayStation 4, I believe, the fastest console to reach the 100 million unit mark, which is a significant milestone. Microsoft at one point made noise about shipping 100 million consoles, meaning that you won the wars at that point. But was it 100 million? It was somewhere around there. Maybe it was 10 million. I think it was a factor of 10. I might have just botched that up. Somebody's going to have to fact check that. And what I'm referring to is Microsoft made a big deal that when the Xbox 360 hit a certain million milestone, meaning that they effectively won the console war. But we all know how that shaped out. We're just going to ignore that for a minute. But anyways, the interesting thing that Sony said during their earnings statements is they said that digital game downloads, have surpassed that of physical games. What they were saying here, if you don't understand, is that more people are downloading digital games than they are buying the physical discs. Now, does this somewhat validates Microsoft's decision to make the Xbox One all digital edition, right? They are clearly seeing the same trend, or a very similar trend, that, hey, digital downloads are going up, physical games are going down, we need that digital console. And they came out, granted their strategy was screwed up with their pricing and not shipping all the features that they initially were building out. But it does validate that Microsoft's idea and decision to go the digital-only route to create the lowest possible price point of the Xbox One S, although they haven't quite always done that, was the right business decision. They just failed on the execution. So yeah, it's not the greatest news for Microsoft, obviously, because they failed in execution, but it's good news for Sony, right? Sony 100 million PlayStation 4s, that is an impressive number. It's an impressive feat. It means that gaming continues to be healthy and strong, and that everybody's a winner when there's more content and there's more places to play. Obviously, the next generation wars are just starting to heat up. We've seen some plays from Sony. We've seen some from Microsoft. We know that Sony is going to use Azure. We know that Microsoft is building out xCloud. There's a lot of good stuff happening in the industry right now. We've got Switch Lite coming up here in the fall. A lot of good things happening from all the different vendors. It is a great time to be a gamer right now. And this has just been a little bit of your midweek wrap up of some of the gaming news.